Hey everyone, I'm back to painting today, and if you wish to stay with me for the next minutes, I'm going to tell you about Impressionism and Water Lilies, also known as the Nymphéas, a series of almost 300 paintings by Impressionist painter Claude Monet. In the description below, you will find links to various other painting commentaries I made, and there is also a playlist available on the front page of my channel. And would you wish to listen to some music watching this video, I recommend you a piece by Debussy. The link to it is also at the bottom. Okay. Impressionist paintings remain fairly popular with the audience. Maybe this is because their aesthetics, their poetry is quickly and easily accessible to most of us. These works are colorful, joyful, and seem to invite us to an immediate and obvious visual pleasure. But when the Impressionist style appeared in the second half of the 19th century, it shocked and represented like a visual revolution. For a part, Impressionism was a reaction to the development of photography, which made it useless for painters to try and represent reality. And this made painters, at least some of them, search for new directions, new subjects to represent, new techniques, and Impressionism, which had precursors before, especially the work of Turner in the first half of the 19th century, emerged in the 1870s, 1880s, with a group of painters like Monet, Renoir, Manet, Sisley, Cézanne, and many others. The main innovation brought by Impressionism is the centrality, the emphasis given to light in these paintings. The ambition was to represent, to depict accurately the quality of light, how it interacts with the textures, with the shapes, how the human eye can perceive this game between light that gives life to everything visual and all the landscapes, objects, situations that were represented. Impressionism also tries to suggest, to include movement, motion in works, because this is also an aspect of human perception that traditional painting and photography failed to represent, and all the techniques used by Impressionists serve these goals. If we look at Impressionist paintings, what they have in common is that they try to capture the essence of the subject, its movement, the emotion it can give, rather than the details. Details are left blur, unprecise, and the colors, too, are never mixed before on the palette. They are applied directly to the canvas, side by side, and the mixing of colors takes place in the eye of the viewer, not before, which gives like a particular vibration to the surface of the canvas. Impressionists also avoided very dark colors. You generally see no black or dark gray in Impressionist paintings, and this is probably what gives this very colorful and luminous aspect to this style. Monet was one of the founders and most prominent figures of Impressionism. He lived 86 years and was active for more than 60 years, leaving hundreds of paintings, including this series of the Water Lilies, on which he worked in the last decades of his life. When he painted this, he was living in the French town of Giverny. The house where he lived and the garden around can still be visited today. They have been turned into a museum and are a popular tourist attraction because he used the scenery of the garden in particular and the pound, studying work after work, how the textures, the surfaces were reacting to the changing light at various moments of the day, and he obsessively, for several decades, produced dozens of pictures, of paintings of the pound, which gave birth to this series of the Water Lilies. This massive work represents like the completion of his art, and many influences he had can be found in the Water Lilies, such as the taste for Japanese art, because Monet, like many other Impressionists, collected Japanese prints that had started to arrive in France in the 19th century, and they were fascinated by the simplicity, the expressiveness, and also the exotism of these prints. Water Lilies, being such a large series of paintings, there are almost 300 of them, of all shapes and sizes, also reflects the importance given by Impressionism to this attempt to capture the fleetingness of time, of scenes, and by making such an extended series. By multiplying these ephemeral moments, Monet was trying to capture the integrality of reality, almost trying to index all the possible variations around the same theme. If we pay attention to any of the paintings in the series, we see that they are landscape paintings, but with no well-defined edge, no skyline either. These are not abstract paintings, they are elements of depth and perspective that remain. Generally the flowers and the plants at the foreground are a bit bigger, larger than the ones at the background, which gives an indication that this represents reality. But this is another revolution in the art of landscape painting that Impressionism and this series in particular has been bringing. Historically, landscapes in paintings were essentially a scenery. They were a setting, making the paintings look like a stage on which the scene that the painter wanted to represent was depicted. Before the rise of Impressionism, landscape painting became a theme in its own right, and in the 18th and 19th centuries, many painters, especially in Britain, specialized in the representation of landscapes. But these landscapes were still heavily staged. They were organized and presented to represent feelings, values, emotions, and they looked always eternal, very well organized. Whereas in Impressionism, the angles look much more random, thoughtless, because the landscape itself is not really the topic. It is more a pretext, an excuse to study the light and to represent movement. And Monet eliminates on the canvas everything that is not this fleeting emotion, this fleeting moment that he wants to represent. I said earlier that Monet in these works, and even more for the last ones, had progressively reduced to the minimum all the indications of perspectives, the elements that allow us to see these paintings in a three-dimensional space. And because of that, he has been considered by some artists, especially in the decades following his death, as a precursor of abstraction. It is true that the Nymphéas have been rather influential, and at the end of his life, he was given the opportunity to install some of these works in a small museum in Paris at the Orangerie, which is just between the Louvre and the Concorde Square. This can still be visited today. But even in the last paintings of the series, Monet never really stopped trying to represent reality, or more exactly, the feelings, the impression that reality could give to the viewer. Even though they become rare, the three-dimensional indications remain, and we cannot really say that these works are purely abstract, but they look more and more abstract as Monet was aging and maturing as an artist. And one thing we can still perceive when looking through these series of canvas is the extraordinary artistic journey, artistic experience that this man has been living during decades, devoting his entire life to the never-ending reproduction of the same scene. But by doing so, he also had a chance, an opportunity to understand the richness, the diversity of reality and of our perception of the world. And this gives me the impression that after years of work and hundreds of paintings, he finally got access to what we could call another dimension of reality, one that is incomparably more filled with richness and diversity than the flat vision of the world we have at first glance. Okay, as usual, this was just intended to be an introduction, and there is much more to discover about Monet's work or Impressionism, but I hope you liked this moment, and as usual, your comments, suggestions, and themes for future videos are very welcome in the comments below. Bye bye.